Getting a Mexican Red Knee Tarantula? Here's a guide on how to look after them. Hello everyone, welcome back to Spooderpods. I am David and today I am doing a care guide for the very popular and awesome Mexican Red Knee Tarantula. Their scientific name is the Brachypelma hamorii and they are a staple in the hobby. They're an excellent beginner species in inverted commas and they're just really stunning to look at. They're one of my favourite tarantula species and I felt they deserved their own dedicated care guide to help you guys if you're just dipping your toes into the hobby or you're unsure how to look after them. The Mexican Red Knee Tarantula or Brachypelma hamorii, just repeating that so you get it very clear, is a staple in the hobby and they are a terrestrial species, which means they tend to live on the ground rather than being arboreal where they climb up and make their webs etc. higher up, and they also can get up to 16 centimetres leg span, which is quite a decent leg span. There are bigger, but I feel they look very impressive at this size. Females do tend to get bigger than males, as you get in most tarantula species, and they have this beautiful red knee coloration, which is like an orangey fiery red on all their leg joints, which is where they get their name from and why they're so popular, because they're so stunning. They're also quite a common species in the hobby, so they don't cost that much if you are looking at getting one, which is another reason they are so popular. As tarantula species go, they are a New World species, which means they do have urticating hairs which can be irritating to you, but as long as you do not hassle them, they really won't want to use them. Our Mexican Red Knee has done it once, but most of the time he prefers to just retreat into his burrow or just move away. He is really docile, and as a general species theme, they are a docile species of tarantula, which is why they're recommended for beginners. You will get individuals who may be a bit fussy, or if they're just after a molt, personality may change, but as a general rule, they are pretty chilled, they're pretty relaxed, and they are reasonably easy to handle if you are gentle with them and if you know what you're doing. They are a fairly long-lived species of tarantula. The females can get into their, well, I think maximum about 30. Males tend to live up to 10 years and they are quite slow growing in comparison to others. Some people would disagree with me on this, but I feel they're like slow to medium in growth. But again, you will see individual variances and it will depend on their environment. Let's start off with one of the most important things, and that's feeding. If you've got a sling or a very small Mexican Red Knee, I'd recommend feeding once or twice a week with locust hatchlings or mini mealworms. They're generally best, or you can use green bottle flies, they will happily take them as well. You may have to pre-kill if you're providing larger prey, but make sure you're keeping an eye on their abdomen size and you're not overfeeding them. Once they get to juvenile size, then you can start moving on to medium locusts, slightly bigger mealworms, maybe even small waxworms. Or I know some people like feeding crickets, but I tend to avoid that. So yeah, those are my recommendations. When they get to adult size, you just want to be basically feeding large locusts. You want to be feeding big mealworms. You can feed big flies. You can give them dubia roaches as well. They seem to really love that. Or usual sort of invert critter feeding. One thing that's really important to keep in mind when you're feeding your tarantula, keep an eye on their abdomen in relation to their body size. You do not want that abdomen getting too big. He wants to be roughly the same sort of size. Obviously, if it gets really small, you may want to up your feeding schedule. If it gets too big, you need to slow it down. That is the best rule of thumb for feeding, as every tarantula will be an individual. And don't be scared if they don't eat for ages. It is perfectly normal for them, especially when they're younger. They will hide, they will go for their molts, and they will chill. Enclosure wise, you want a pretty decent sized enclosure if you're getting an adult. We're talking about 20 centimetres by 30. Normally by 20 as well, so 20 by 20 by 30 as a sort of minimum. You can go smaller, but it won't give them enough room to move around. When they're younger, obviously do that proportionally. You can start off with maybe a tarantula cribs, sling enclosure, and then upgrade and upgrade and upgrade. It is just you want to make it in proportion to their size. Think about their leg length. You want it to be roughly 3 times their leg length as a minimum. In terms of kitting it out, you want them to have a hide. We use a coconut hide, which is very cheap and easy, and Diego seems to love it. You can use whatever you want as long as you provide a decent hide. Make sure there is a decent depth of substrate in that enclosure as well. We want it generally half full because they are terrestrial species and they do like to dig, especially when they're younger, because it makes them feel safer and they like to have a nice burrow. When they get older, they won't care as less. They will maybe go in there to molt, but they'll be on display most of the time for you. You also want some decorative items, mostly for your benefit, but also so they can crawl over it, and it's a bit of enrichment for them, also for hunting their prey if you do like to leave live prey or multiple live prey in there when they're older. Make sure you do provide a water dish at all times. I know it's quite difficult when they're very young, so just wet one corner. They don't need a lot of moisture, they're from Mexico, so it's quite an arid environment, but they do need water accessible at all times, and it's good to have one little area with a bit of moisture for them. It also helps to keep the soil safe if you're using soil substrate, and it helps it to bind together when they're digging burrows. Just to add to this, I do recommend soil substrate. It is, from my experience, one of the best substrates you can use. You can mix it with a bit of sand if you want it to be a bit drier, but I don't recommend cocoa coir anymore. I know some people swear by it, but for us it tends to just get mouldy. It's just harder for them to dig through, and it's just not as nice. I like soil substrate. I put a few spring towels in the corner of this guy, clean it all up, and yeah, you can have it more arid. They're perfectly happy with that, but just make sure you provide that water dish. Temperature and humidity wise, I'll start with humidity. Humidity wise, it needs to be fairly dry. As I said in the previous point, keep that corner a little bit wetter, have that water dish, and that's all the humidity they need. It needs to be as dry as possible. Temperature wise, the rule of thumb, and I saw this in Tarantula Collective, it stands like the test for these guys, is if you're happy, they're happy. So you want it to be a nice stable room temperature. 21 degrees is quite happy. They will prefer it to be warmer sometimes, so maybe if you get the opportunity, maybe provide them a little bit of heating in colder months just so they're comfortable, but they're pretty relaxed when it comes to heating. As long as you're comfortable, they're going to be pretty comfortable as well. Just another quick note on enrichment and setup. Remember, make sure you have that hide for them. Make sure you have that depth of substrate, because they will go crawling on those walls, and they may jump down. And make sure that hide is pre-dug out if possible. They will dig it out themselves, but it's pre-dug out. When they arrive with you, they may go straight into pre-molt and just end up going straight in there. So at least it's pre-prepared for them and it's good. Maybe some climbing elements as well to make things comfortable as possible for them and to set them up for success. I always talk a little bit more about their behaviour as well and what they can be like. If you are a newer owner, don't be scared of the dreaded molt or pre-molt. They, when especially younger, can hide an awful lot, spend a lot of time hiding. It's their defence mechanism. They don't want to get eaten. They'll come out when they're hungry, so that's completely normal for them. The older they get, the more time they will spend out on display. It's another reason they're so popular, because they will sit out there and they're not fussed. They'll be quite happy, both the males and females, so you'll get to enjoy them an awful lot on those beautiful leg patterns. If they do go into pre-molt, it's best to stop feeding them for a little while. Just offer it, and then if they don't want it, stop. And once they're molting, or just after their molt, leave it a couple of days before you do feed them. It's common advice, and it really does stand the test of time, because their fangs won't have hardened, and if you're putting locusts in there, that could even be a threat to them. Do remove prey after 24 hours to make sure it doesn't go funny. If you know they're not in pre-molt or anything, you leave it a little bit longer, but that's generally the best guideline. So there you have it, that's my guide on looking after your Mexican Red Knee. If any other tips you have, please feel free to drop them down below. If you like my channel and my content, do subscribe and do watch my other videos. There's loads of stuff on tarantulas and all sorts of inverts, but in the meantime, take care and see you later.